Hello. It is my immense pleasure to announce the next speaker for the day, Dr. Lipika De. Dr. Lipika De is a chief scientist at TCS Research and Innovation and heads analytics and insights practices. She graduated with an MSc in mathematics and holds a master's degree in computer science and data processing, both from IIT Kharagpur. Moreover, Dr. Day also did her PhD in computer science and engineering from IIT Kharagpur and has since published over 130 research papers on various topics such as areas of natural language processing, text and data mining, machine learning, and semantic search. One of our most exciting research papers, titled A K-mean clustering algorithm for mixed numeric and categorical data, which by the way has been cited over 600 times, proposes a clustering algorithm based on K-mean paradigm that works well for data with both numeric as well as categorical features. Dr. Day will be answering questions after her talk, so please, if you have any, do add them to the Q&A. Without further ado, I'll let Dr. Day take over from here.
Thank you very much, Khushi, that for a kind introduction. I have been here for the day, and really, it's an amazing program. End of the day, I'm not sure how equipped you all are to have yet another technical talk, but that's all I can do. Speak technically. So let me share my screen. Just bear with me. Yeah, I hope all of you can see my screen.
Yep, looks perfect.
Yeah, thank you. This will not be really as technical as, so that you can learn really something about the mathematics behind what I do. However, I hope to give you a brief of what's exciting out there so that you youngsters can really carry on the mantle forward. So I call it data science for me, but basically I talk about the little mathematics that is behind language processing. And one of the famous quotes that we have is basically that words are known by the company they keep, and that's what keep us going on in handling our language technology tasks. So, I like to say this, whether it is true or not, that what has made AI and data science household terms. By household terms, I mean that even possibly grandfathers and grandmothers today know of these terms. And if you think about it, it is really the power of natural language processing that has changed the way a lot of people who were earlier not used to using the technology have started using technology like smartphones and so on. So today, grandmothers, they use Google Assistant to look for the recipe of their grandmother's Christmas cakes. Of course, whether a person knows whether to type or not, they can speak to a phone and ask for directions. And hence, really, if you think about it, natural language processing, there are two parts of it. One is, of course, dealing with the written, but that area itself encompasses dealing with what is spoken also. Because if we look beyond the speech signals captured and converted to words, what we will have to deal with is understanding of the content so that the systems can really make understand what a person wants and thereafter return back the results. So I really like to believe that natural language processing is one of the key areas of artificial intelligence and data science, which has really gone a long way to make it very, very popular. Okay. So, what exactly do we mean by natural language processing? It's the ability of a machine to understand what a human is saying. And when I say saying, I will interchangeably refer to what is told as in speech data and also what is typed as in text data. So, we really talk about two different things over here. One is ability to understand, interpret, analyze, and a very recent phenomenon is success in also generating natural language, or the ability of a machine to actually speak back to us, not just by listing a set of documents or giving one word answers, but ideally giving us back the answers as if there was a human being sitting behind and uh, giving us the answers. Of course, dream is it's not just answers to questions, but can it carry on a human like conversation? We have not really progressed that far, but to some extent, it is still possible in smaller contexts or in a domain dependent way. So, these are some of the very recent advances. By recent, I mean last 10 years advances in the area of natural language processing. And what has really uh, enabled this success is the data. So, it is a kind of two-way relationship we have with the smart systems. We speak, we write, we give it the data, and as a result of it, the machine learning algorithms sitting behind are becoming smarter and smarter. Of course, they will have to have the ability to deal with large volumes of data. However, that's where it is data science that is coming into picture, and the recent success is powered by data. So therefore, natural language processing, data science, these are no more really separable. I look upon them all as coming together, and that's what is very important to understand and carry forward. So, let us look at what exactly is happening. So, here is an example. From the very early 80s, end of 80s, when I just finished my master's and I was thinking about, doing a PhD, language attracted me. I was always attracted to language. So, doing something in natural language attracted me. However, what were the models that time? So, language models are something that existed even then. What was the language model? The language model was trying to understand that can we emulate the way humans speak. So, here is an example. If I give this dash, dash, dash over here, and I say that, okay, if I leave it at this, can a machine complete it by understanding the model or having a model of what is right to be filled in up here? So, if early in the morning, it would have been perfect. Good morning, nice to be here today. I wish I had written here good afternoon now or good evening. Anyway, we know that after this, as a greeting, it would be good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever. And that's really something you can say is a model. So, in the initial days when we were, working in these technologies, the attempt was to use probability theory to do this language modeling. So, the language modeling, just let me minimize it. Yeah. So, what was the language model saying? Saying that if we had, imagine, if we had all possible sentences or sequences of words recorded either in digital form or whatever in available for the machine to process, then we can build a probability or compute the probability of the sequence of words. Now, what does this mean? It means that some sequences would have high probability, other sequences would have possibly zero probability if I look at the space of things spoken. So good morning would have quite a high probability, good night, good day, good afternoon, all would have somewhat high probabilities. Morning good would not have a high probability. And if I look at these probabilistic estimates that I can get from the data, then possibly a machine can learn what to say. So it won't say something like, good lunch, nice to be here today, or possibly, yes, you can think of some word which is not going after this, which would really have a low probability. And so the idea was that that's how systems would learn. But now this n is something which could be anything. It could be 3, 4, 10, 20. We do have 15 word sentences also. So that means there could be sequences as long as 15 elements over here. And look at the probabilities that we have over here, which is starting from right the first word and the second word, the third word following the first two words, and so on. So that means essentially, if we stuck to this probabilistic models today, it would have been simply explosive, because you can imagine now what is our data. We say there's lots of data that is over here which would allow us to do this probabilistic computations. There was once upon a time when there was no data, because there were no digital interfaces for common human beings like us to put in the data, which has changed now. There is also a lot of open source data that is available. This is a part which we all are putting in. We are in fact playing the roles of producers of data in this. These are news sources, these are Wikipedia, lots and lots of data. So can you even imagine the number of such sequences that would be there, and hence to build a model using probabilistic theories. However, why I put it over here is the dream was always there, and this still forms a kind of basis for the models that we have today. However, of course, how many words, how many sentences, how many sequences, they really make our heads reel. We did still struggle at that time to come up with something even within these limitations. And remember, at that time, we did not even have huge computing power, no data. Still, we did have this model, and we struggled working with that. So what changed? What has changed is today we are dreaming of generative models for NLP. And we are saying that if I could actually train a system, again, see, the fundamental basis sort of remains same. Only thing that changes is over here. So for the time being, just ignore it, but look at the problem. If I say the students opened there and I expect a term to come over here, it's very similar to the good morning problem. It's a longer sequence, and the system out here today, which has changed, is sprouting out laptops. Okay. Of course, old timers like me are a bit dampened. We say, oh, it's not saying the students open their books, but remember, this is data driven. So the amount of data that is there out in the web actually has more students opening their books and more students opening their laptops and not books. Therefore, this system learns to predict this. Now, what is this prediction system? This prediction system today is a huge collection of computing nodes, which are called neurons, and neurons stacked in multiple layers, many neurons who are doing computation at their small nodes, whatever data is coming in, and is making this prediction possible. But if you look at it, what is core inside? The core inside is still something like it has to know that laptop is a logical thing to follow after this, and not zoo or not something else. Okay, books is still possible with a lower probability, laptops with a high probability, and so on. So therefore, the probability theory has not gone away. What has really come into place is a different kind of implementation, which we call deep neural nets, which is something that is there for last 10-15 years, which has actually made the dream of such kind of systems today true. That is, if you utter half the sentence, the system can actually complete it for you. Okay, how? And that is where we have what we call training. Now, I give this example from the visual domain, not from the language domain, because it's easier to understand. However, the training methodologies inside remain same. The architecture sort of remains same. So these are these small neurons, layers and layers of neurons connected to each other. Only a few connections are shown over here. Millions of connections really in one architecture, who will learn to predict, who can learn to do many other tasks like distinguishing between a cat and a dog. And this is what goes on inside preparing a system to do the tasks that we want it to do, whether it is about predicting or completing a sentence, or about classifying between two different pictures, or for that matter, classifying between two different kinds of documents. So this is in short what happens, and these are the key points. Collect thousands of labeled examples, initialize the weights over here, give a sample, let the weights decide what is the output, and you also have a desired output. So if this output is okay, it's correct, then fine. Otherwise, go and adjust these weights. That's fundamentally what is happening. Now, it's easier said than done because of all these weights that have to be learned, and it has to be correct on thousands of labeled examples. Okay, so it sometimes does mistakes, just like our sentence predictor will make mistake. Sometimes it will make mistake, and this dog looks so much like a cat, so therefore even a very smart system can go and say this is a cat. Okay, but as we say, to err is human, to err is a machine also, and we should accept it and still look at the strides that it has made. So while we deal with these machines, what came in as the backend also was something phenomenal, which we never looked at earlier. We were always looking at words and probabilistic sequence of words, etc. Now, this is where some of the Turing Award winners, you might have heard the names if you belong to the area of computer science, which is Bengio, Lekan, and Hinton, who went on to do something much more phenomenal. And one of the work in this area came from Bengio's team, which was actually not only looking at words as words, but words themselves became a kind of mathematical unit. And this is a phenomenal work which said that words can be also viewed as points in an n-dimensional vector space. And the dimension of the vectors could be 300, 150, depending on what's the corpus size. Typically, we have millions of words in any language vocabulary, and that too, I don't mean the entire language. Vocabulary is still in somewhat restricted context, like, biomedical vocabulary is very different, say, from atomic energy vocabulary, say, from everyday news vocabulary, and so on. Still, in any vocabulary, we have millions of words, and therefore, something like 300 to 500 dimensional vectors to use. You can look at the dimensions which we are talking about today, and the journey was complete. Computers knew how to manipulate numbers better. There were architectures which were in place which could be trained to do some tasks which are more perceptual in nature, like image classification. Now, with this particular work, it became very easy to adopt all these architecture with huge number of connections, nodes, everything. And some amazing things that we can see now are that we can really think about Euclidean distance between the words as the semantic relationship between the words also, or the Euclidean distance captures the semantic distance of words. So basically, that's what I say is a jump from the more esoteric world of language, words, concepts, to having the mathematical representations behind it. The work is still on. While we do have some of these things in English language, it is not complete for all languages. While we do have semantic distances better captured, we do not have it for other kinds of tasks still so well now. So therefore, there are a lot of things to do. However, with these kind of steps coming in, that is, words now are vectors, this training to do is actually able to learn things just like you may be teaching a stubborn baby. So initially it may do mistakes, initially as the training goes on, it may say things like students open their mama, papa, the door, etc., whatever it is, but go on and on and on, pester the network, we say, and train it till it learns to say laptop or iPad or Kindle or books or whatever. That is what you want to see. Now, so two fundamental things. One is tremendous amounts of data. The other is the mathematical representations, or making it easy for the computers to deal with words, is actually what has made this huge stride possible. Now that we have taught machines to understand our language, I would or should have put it actually under quotes. It's not really understanding, it's really able to do the manipulations better. So let us see what they can do for us. And in this space, we have huge number of NLP based systems today that we can use. I already gave you the example of generation, but now where is it used? Of course, not just like running academic programs and generating assistants, a sentence, but they are used in chatbots or agents, where when you ask a question, you want answers to come back in a proper linguistically constructed sentence. And preferably it can carry on the conversation for some time. We still don't know how to make it do a lot of small talk, because small talk is very contextual, very cultural, and so on. But if we have the data, we can make it learn, is what we believe. The second important stride has been in the area of machine translation. Now, again, we old timers have struggled with machine translation by looking at those fragments of sentences in one language and another language, and tried to make a system learn. The problem was that two languages may have a sentence perfectly translated from one to another, but in once you look at the two sentences, one which is a translation of another, there may not be positional co-occurrence between the words. So the first word may have gone at the end, the second word may have gone last but one, and so on. So you say the cat sat on the mat, but in Hindi you say billi chatai par baiti hai. So the chatai or the mat comes as the second word, and it was not easy to just go by learning from sequences. It's again deep learning, which actually learned from millions of such sequences. Somehow it could actually understand the grammar or encapsulate the rules of grammar with, again, lots of sentences in Hindi and in English, in any two languages for that matter, and can do a much better job. Now, at this point, I would like to say, though I keep on saying understand the grammar, etc., it's really that the large data sets has made it probabilistically possible to be right in a large number of ways, and still there are hilarious mistakes that the translators do. But now come our role. If you remember, just 2 days back, I think there was one hilarious sentence about Sachin Tendulkar. I don't exactly remember the sentence. But when a lot of people started looking at it, laughing at it, it became a data to go back to the system. And that's what we call learning or reinforcement learning, which by evening, Google had that translation became correct simply because a lot of people gave in the feedback that it was not right. So the role of data, the role of humans in generating the data, and the role of algorithms all play equal role. I look at the second area. Now, this is interesting. While natural language understanding based systems like looking at the content and summarizing large texts. Now, this is a box which rather made a lot of progress in the last few years, 20 years, minus the deep learning aspects. So these are more of the areas where we traditionally use a lot of grammatical tools, the part of speech taggers, our understanding of what is a name, etc., in those applications. So deep learning decides or uses mostly the numbers or the sequences, whereas the other set of applications, which I like to call analytical applications, have to go deeper into the linguistic constructs of the data itself. So here are some collections where one thing leads to the other. So we don't have always a clear separation between a generative application and an analytical application when we deal with real life applications. So this is a pure analytical application, sentiment analysis, which you may have heard the name, measures sentiments about a product like a movie, book, review, whatever, caffeine based hand creams, herbal men's shampoo, and we are all using it. So when you want to buy a product, you look at the reviews. Now you cannot read thousands of reviews. You actually look at ratings generated from automated tools who go through the reviews and come up with the different aspects that are being discussed, and then come up with the scoring, which is something like 4.3 or something like that. Okay. There are the conversation systems, which again have become very popular over last 1 year during the pandemic, healthcare systems all over the world, government agencies all over the world have deployed it because they are now usable. They may not be best possible ones, but they definitely provide the first point of contact, using the technologies that I was talking about, giving a lot of information. So what is the challenge? Challenge is humans are giving a question, and the question, when we type in our own language, which could maybe not perfect English or perfect Hindi, but nevertheless it's a question, it's not a search word. But what we are finding is the systems are doing pretty well in retrieving the answers, even though it is not fed exactly. It's not a lookup system that is doing the task behind it. And of course, examples of machine translation, while we have seen some things like doing good translation at a sentence level, it's picking up at document level. So one of the key uses is of course in the area of education, where non-English speakers can definitely benefit with the technology, because a lot of content is there in English. So if that could be translated, and not only English is only for technical education, it could be really translation of from any language to any language. So literature loving people may want French literature to be translated, and so on. Translators have to be good. Right now the essence of things are somewhat captured in by these kind of systems. Literature is still a far away dream, but technical information is somewhat understood. One of the huge applications of this lies in the area of legal systems, even in the context of our country, where there are the local courts who are producing, who are having the documents in regional languages, but when they move to Supreme Court, all of them have to be translated into English. So a lot of legal projects are coming up in dealing with where they want to use AI and NLP in order to do a lot of tasks. Okay, education, while we have all shifted to online for the interactions, we would really like to now see what are the best ways of also having automated assessments. We are really not so good at automated assessments yet. And automated assessments is not just for making life of a teacher easy, it's also for making life of a learner easy, because you can take more tests, you can get more assessment if there could be automated assessments. So finally, before I conclude, so let me say, organizations today have already taken into a lot of these technologies that I spoke about, chatbots and sentiment analysis tools and so on. And we, a lot of them run in a mode which we typically call listen, analyze, respond, and continuously. This particular cycle, it's of course our aim that they should all blend into each other and run smoothly. I'll finally end with two applications, a quick look at, this particular conference theme was also to be for social good. Now, of course, if we can help people in doing their task, that is social good. But there are very typical some applications which are coming up, and we were discussing some of these things during the panel. And let me just advertise a bit about our own work. So this is some work we did during the pandemic time. We analyzed a social media site called Reddit. Reddit is more popular, of course, in the West, I understand that. But the point of it was to actually track mental health of young adults during pandemic. and we hit upon a group of people through analysis where these people actually were suffering from some kind of mental health disorder. Some of them were declared patients, and some of them were fearing that they were breaking down. And so the point is, while there were a lot of surveys conducted by universities in reaching out to their students, we looked at whether text mining can get some issues which are not typical to university students or school students in a separate way. They are also not asking fixed survey questions. Can they really identify the issues in an automated way? So we used some methods called topic detection, etc. Again, some established methods, and I show you some tag clouds for these very interesting tag clouds, some of which are psychiatrists know about them and they could detect easily, like suicidal tendencies of people, and when tracked over time we could see how it was increasing. So along with psychiatrists, we looked at whether this tool could detect the point when it was rising, and typically these were rising beyond April. So we divided the times into different time frames. The entire 9-month period we did this analysis on, which was published in September till then, and also looked at some very interesting issues like what role friends play in the role of pupil. It's not just friends where particularly for disturbed people, friends are like a huge support. Friends and teachers who were outside their family were actually they got support from them, and they were terribly missing that kind of a support, which was in again leading them to more depression and disturbance in even doing regular bodily functions like eating, sleeping, and so on. So all these elements were there, and one of the key points again was a lot of financial stress in people who were graduating, about to graduate, who did not have job offers, who had to pay bank loans, typically in the West. And hence, who are the takers of this analysis? So while a part of the analysis is taken by the psychiatrists to monitor, to counsel, a part of it is taken by the academic institutes for looking at what roles they can play in providing support, especially to people who need how to detect those early stress signals, reach out, and also by financial institutes who are actually looking for strategies to deal with deal with people in a post-pandemic world. So multiple different takers for that work. This is my pre-final slide. Again, these are some of the areas we have heard from the morning, but there are many other areas which can be done using data science and NLP, and again some of the work. So the left hand side is actually a crime profiler that we designed, which can extract different types of crimes that are committed, and along with the metadata that is again in the text, like where the crime was committed, what type of crime. I'm sorry, this legend just got cut off. These different colors are for different types of crimes like petty crimes, robbery, trafficking, and crime against women, and so on. So these different types of crime spread across different places. So it's like a crime profiler for a geography, which again helps lawmakers to decide what kind of actions are to be taken where. I am just talking about the insight derivation. Actions are a separate issue altogether. This is again a very recent work that we do, again tracking, both of these are tracking open source intelligence, that is documents that are available out there in the public, whether on social media, news sites, court documents, reports submitted by different companies and so on. And this is something which we are doing, like tracking these articles. So here you can see Shell Energy ordered to pay so much after overcharging thousands of customers. Someone else is violating an occupational safety and health clauses. So huge collections of such articles are there. News reports come up every day. We have built systems to crawl all these articles, and then these black ones are like summaries of these elements extracted by our analytical systems, with different colored portions saying different things, like this is a money value, this is the company, and so on. Using all of these analysis, what we ultimately come up with is a kind of sustainability scoreboards. Sustainability is a keyword for companies these days. Investors are conscious about whether the company is fair in its practices towards child labor, women in the board, having all kinds of diversity taken care of, what are their environmental commitments, what are their social commitments. What we ultimately, as a result of analysis, come up with is this kind of a scoreboard, which is saying company A is doing well in a few things, there's no information here, company B is wrong in this, and so on. So, okay, that's all. We have touched the tip of the iceberg, is what I believe, with a lot of data available and data science practices coming into place. However, lots more that we can do. Typically, one or two things we cannot do now. As I mentioned, we can't carry on a human-like conversation with an agent for long. There is a lot of information out there, but not accessible to many because of language barriers, technology barriers, and so on. So there are distinct areas to work on. We can't handle deliberate deceit, noise introduced by human beings so well. We can only learn it over time, again, when we have a lot of data. But unfortunately, by that time, the humans are smarter and they change their ways of incorporating deceit and noise. So these are some of the areas which we still have to work on, whether as techniques, algorithms, technologies, laws, policies. But definitely I believe that data science is here to really make our dream of making this world an even better place. I would like to focus on even better place. It's a good place, and we'll definitely uh, be a better planet soon, better planet, greener planet soon.